Greetings all. Welcome to On West Gray, the official podcast of the City of Norman. I'm your host, Bryce Holland, multimedia specialist here at the City of Norman. On this month's episode, I'd like to welcome Anais Starr. Anais is one of our city planners in the Planning and Community Development Department, working diligently on city planning and zoning codes and whatnot, but we're not here to talk about that side of her job. In addition to her normal city planner duties, Anais is also our historic preservation officer and our go-to expert on all things historic here in the city of Norman. Some of our listeners may not know this, but Norman is home to several historic neighborhoods, and Anais works very closely with the homeowners there to preserve the historic nature of their homes, and we wanted to have her on today to talk about this somewhat little-known aspect of city government. Anais, thank you for being here today with us.
Thank you for having me. Excellent opportunity to talk about historic preservation.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. I think people mostly think of, cities growing in the future and things like that, but there is also kind of an important part of city government is sort of preserving that history that we can, especially when it comes to our buildings.
That's correct. That's right. And there are definitely citizens out there interested in preserving their historic character in their neighborhoods, and that's why we have historic districts.
Well, let's just kind of dive in. Tell me a little bit about your history at the City of Norman. You've been here at the city for quite a long time, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. My original history actually starts back probably 2004-ish, 2005. I acted as one of the historic district commissioners. I didn't work for the city then. I worked at a different city as a planner, but lived here in Norman. So they recruited me to be on the historic district commission. I served, I believe, 8 years. Got off. You're kind of maxed out at 9 years. And then the historic preservation officer at that time, I knew. She lives not that far away from me. We'd run into each other. She said, hey, one day, I think there's the historic preservation officer position is going to come open at the city. Keep your eyes out. So I did. And then I applied. And so that was in 2014, October of 2014, that I came to the city of Norman with one of my tasks, definitely a major part of my task, probably being the historic preservation officer. Obviously, like you said, I have other duties, but yeah. So I've been doing historic preservation since I got here in 2014.
So historic preservation officer, that's now a title that we've said a couple times in the podcast, and you also mentioned the Historic District Commission, which I definitely want to get to talk about that. But historic preservation officer, that is a position that's actually in our city charter, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's in the city zoning ordinance.
So it's in our zoning ordinance. Okay.
Yes. And so what it's back in the mid 1990s, there was an interest in preserving historic areas of town. So there was obviously some meetings and such, and they came up with that they needed to establish a historic commission of some sort. So an ordinance was passed, and in that ordinance it says what that historic district commission will be comprised of, and it also says there's duties in there for a historic preservation officer. So like taking in application requests for changes to historic properties, processing those, getting those to the Historic District Commission. So those are actually laid out in the zoning ordinance that there will be a historic preservation officer who will do that. So yeah. That's
interesting. So Historic District Commission, this is another one of our many boards and commissions that we have here at the city, like our Planning Commission, technically kind of the City Council, our Greenbelt Commission, there's so many of them, but that's another one of them. What is their, Historic District, we know they deal with that, but what's the function of what the Historic District Commission does?
Their primary function is to review requests to alter structures that are in one of the three designated historic districts. And so they're actually a little bit different than our other boards and commissions. They're what we call a quasi-judicial body. So they aren't making recommendations. They are the deciders. They make a decision. That decision can be appealed to, like, the Board of Adjustment. But when people make an application, they do think that it's kind of like the Historical Society, and that, or maybe like a HOA, and it is neither of those. It is a legal body that has legal authority to make decisions.
So we're talking about like an important group of people when you get down to it.
Yeah, yes, and it requires some some guidance on that because sometimes when folks get on the commission, they think that it is like an HOA or it is, and so we have an orientation session. We go over the legal aspects of that and what that means. But since they are a quasi-judicial body, they are technically having a public hearing, and they're having a hearing and hearing evidence when we have a case at the commission. So that is one of their primary duties. Another duty is when items get nominated to the National Register of Historic Places, it has to be reviewed by the local commission as required by the National Park System. And we work with the Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office. It has to go through them, but it does need to be reviewed and have some kind of recommendation, even if it's a recommendation of no, come from the local commission. So that's another duty that they have. Their other duty is to, on occasion, every decade or so, which probably needs to be more often than that as the world changes so fast, they do have to work on revising the preservation guidelines that those 3 historic districts have to abide by. But those are the primary duties. They don't have some commissions, preservation commissions in the United States have other things they do, like landmark a building. We probably could if we wanted, but and by making some changes to the ordinance that could happen, but that's not something they do. People don't know them quite so well in the community. If they live in one of the historic districts, they probably know them, but if they don't, they're not like a showy commission. It's not like the city council where everybody kind of knows who they are, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, before we get to talking about the actual different historic districts that we have here in Norman, I kind of wanted to have you talk a little bit about why do we do this? Why is it important to have historic preservation in a city? I mean, because, we're not unique in this way. I mean, I know a lot of cities have this. I mean, obviously you talked about national parks. I mean, that kind of falls in there a little bit. Like there is sort of like a much broader, wider community and governmental interest in like historic preservation of places and sites and neighborhoods. Right. Talk a little bit. Why is that important?
Well, I think it's important that people want to, this is their history. And so what you're doing is preserving the history of the community. And in Norman, the 3 districts that are preserved, which there could be more, but the 3 that are preserved, again, it was citizen initiated. They wanted to. They're looking to retain that character, that development and how it happened, and keep that character. Most of the time, that's going to be the 1920s, 30s, and 40s that we're looking at in our districts. But that the history is kind of like if you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going, and so. The point of the preservation is to preserve those particular structures so that folks can see, this is how our city basically began and how we developed. There definitely could be more historic districts because the time period is 50 years. So in order to be kind of considered a historic structure, and so now you could actually have 1960s and 1970s, 1950s, obviously, structures be in a district. We just don't. Again, it is neighborhood driven. They want to be in a district.
So, I mean, in a lot of ways, these historic neighborhoods that we have, because they are all, if I'm not mistaken, all of them that we have, they are residential neighborhoods.
Yes.
So, in a lot of ways, they're kind of like a living time capsule to a certain degree, where people are still living and doing what people do in their day-to-day life, but in these areas that date back to the earliest founding of our city.
Yes.
So let's talk about, you said we had 3 different districts here. What are our 3 historic districts here in Norman?
Okay, so we have the Chautauqua Historic District, which is west of campus. and we have the Miller Historic District, which is kind of south of downtown, east of the railroad tracks. And then you have the Southridge Historic District, which is the easiest way to explain where that is. It's east of the Mont, because most people know where the Mont is.
It's one of those landmarks, a place that we should preserve.
Right. And the Mont, unfortunately, is not in the historic district. Most people think it is because it looks very, historic, but it is not in the historic district. But it's an easy, landmark, different kind of landmark where everybody knows where it is. And then when I tell them that, they're like, oh, okay, that neighborhood, yes, they know it. But like I said, they are generally 20s, 30s, 40s, but they do have their own uniqueness that make them different from each other. I do have frequently other people ask about other districts that they may see signs, like Campus Corner has Campus Corner Historic District, but that is something that maybe the Campus Corner merchants got together, and it is historic in the sense that obviously it was built in another time period, but it's not a city designated historic district.
Right.
So you might see one or two out there, and people think the downtown Norman is, but is not in a historic district.
Well, because we also have some other neighborhoods here in Norman that sort of have their own name, but they're not historic districts. So, I know we have Old Silk Stocking, and we have First Courthouse and things like that. But those aren't officially designated as historic districts.
That's
the same
correct.
way these other three are.
And often people think they are. Like I said, people think that the downtown area is, Campus Corner is. They think Old Silk Stocking is, which is actually truly a very that would be the turn of the century neighborhood and early 1900s, but it's not in a historic district. But they do have those names. So Old Silk Stocking, First Courthouse. And so people assume that maybe they are in a district, and they are not in a city designated district. And I want to add, there is other districts, historic districts. There is districts that can be on the National Register of Historic Places. That's the federal level, and they are not. They're not designated necessarily as a city historic district. And they don't have any protection, but they are listed on the National Register of Historic Places because of their importance to that community, historic importance of some reason. It may be architecturally, or it might be some historic, and that's true of individual buildings too. We have quite a few individual buildings that are on the National Register of Historic Places, but they don't have city protection. And with city protection, or city designation as a historic district, you have to get permission to alter the exterior of the structure. And unlike a National Register listed structure, they can alter that without permission from the city.
So this is kind of a good jumping off point to talk about, at least sort of the broad strokes about what it is that sort of your job is and why we do this and sort of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. A lot of, from what I kind of understand, you're mostly dealing with people that would sort of let's use the Miller Historic District. Someone kind of moves in there, they buy a house, but they want to make some refurbishments to it, or they want to do some things. Where I live, so I live in a development on the east side of town or anything like that. If I want to do something to my house, I pretty much just have to go through the basic process. And if I want to paint my house or I want to replace a window, I don't have to ask anyone's permission because my house was built in 2012.
Right.
There's nothing historic there, but I live in the Miller Historic District. I want to, a window gets broken or my door or something, and I want to replace that. It's not as simple as just replacing those things. Talk a little bit about that.
Right. Now you're going to have to, first and foremost, you need to contact me before you do anything. You will have to go through a review process. At the very minimum, what we call an administrative bypass review process, which is through me, but it is an application process. You have to fill out an application. You have to provide me documentation of existing and then what you're proposing. So that might be a specification sheet on a window or a door as to what you're going to replace. And quite often on windows and doors, if it's one window, you may be able to go through the review process with me. But if you're wanting to replace all your windows, you're going to have to go through the Historic District Commission and make a formal application and provide all the documentation needed to do that. And then they will make a decision. And honestly, windows and doors are the souls of historic houses. So I caution people, and this is why I say call me first. I caution people when I think that they will not get it approved through the Historic District Commission because it does not meet the historic preservation guidelines. I will let them know that, and like, you can apply for this, but it's not meeting the guidelines. And so here's what does meet the guidelines and what you need to think about and for your house. Other things like replacing your asphalt shingled roof that got beat up by hailstorm, they can just do that because that's kind of considered ordinary maintenance for your house.
That was actually what I was going to kind of ask next. Like, are there things that someone that living in one of these houses, can they just do them?
Yeah, usually the roofing. We do have is something they can just do. We do have a few houses that have historic roofs. You may have seen some with red tile.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah. They would have to get those reviewed. But a lot of the houses originally were wood shingles. And so a lot of those went away over the decades. So by the time the districts became historic districts, which, by the way, was like 1995 and 1997, a lot of those had been changed out. So you're doing something, and around Oklahoma, something that's very ordinary maintenance because, every other year we have a hailstorm.
Absolutely.
So you're going to need to redo your roof. So that's one. If you have a wood-sided house and you want to repaint it, you can repaint it. It doesn't require a review. It can be any color you want, which people are surprised at that, but we do not control color palette.
That's nice. I mean, some people get very particular about those things, and they want a house that is that shade of blue.
Exactly. And if you have like a piece of trim around the door, the window, and it's rotten, you can replace that with another piece of wood, same dimensions, same design, and that's kind of considered ordinary maintenance. It's when you get into large elevation alterations. Say you want to replace all the siding on the side of a house or most of the siding, then you have to get that reviewed.
So, well, let me ask this, because I just kind of thought about it. So I can totally understand, preserving sort of the exterior character of a lot of these structures, because if people are driving through those neighborhoods, they're going to see the exterior.
Right.
Do we have a lot of limitations or like review for like the interior of the house?
No, there's no review on the interior at all by the historic preservation guidelines or by the Historic District Commission. Unless it affects the exterior. So an instance where that might be, and we have had this come up several times, is a bathroom window. A lot of times people want to put those glass blocks in instead. They have to get that reviewed. And honestly, if it's on the side of the house and you can see it from the sidewalk, it's probably not going to get approved. But generally speaking, no, what they do on the inside, they can go in and gut the whole entire inside, and we don't have any purview over that aspect.
So if I want to have a house that looks like it's from the 1930s, but the interior looks like it's something from the Jetsons, then I'm good to go on that.
And that's what some people do. You go in and it's all new swanky looking, and other people love. There's quite a few people who love historic houses, and they go in and they refurbish all of that woodwork in there and keep the wood floors, keep the wood trim, or the wood walls, whatever they have.
Yeah.
And they love it, and keep all the quirky features that they have that maybe we don't have these days. But yeah, so it is up to the individual what they do on the inside as far as repairs, renovations, and et cetera.
So let's talk a little bit about, obviously, if someone is going to purchase a house in one of these neighborhoods, they would sort of know ahead of time. It would be something that they'd be told, hey, you're going to be in this, historic neighborhood, right? I mean, I would.
They should be. It is a state law that they are to usually real estate agents are involved, and they have a disclosure form to fill out.
So in a perfect world, people do kind of know about this, but I'm sure there are times when people don't.
And there's a box on this disclosure form which is supposed to be marked, and again, you're supposed to see this disclosure form when you go to your closing. But if you go to the Cleveland County website and you pull up an address, it isn't going to be flashing.
Right,
this is a
right.
historic house or in a historic district, and the same. If you call and ask us, we can in our planning department we can tell you, but it's not. It's not. And there are signs in the neighborhood.
Yes,
right?
on kind of the light posts and stuff. You see those,
posts.
yeah.
So that's kind of an indication that maybe you need to check. Again, like I said, some of the signs out there, like in the campus neighborhood, they're not actually in a historic district. But that's another way, and we do have it on our maps, and obviously we have it on the webpage under the historic district webpage. We have information on the maps that show because not all of Chautauqua and not all of Miller and not all. Well, most of Southridge, but not all of Southridge are in these designated districts.
Yeah.
So they usually do have an idea. Sometimes there are circumstances where maybe they don't, and sometimes maybe they just don't want to believe that they're in a district. So yeah, that's where I spend my time working with folks.
So I can see why the city would have sort of a vested interest in wanting to keep these neighborhoods looking the way they do. I mean, to a certain degree, there's kind of a tourist aspect, because there are some people that really love to just see old houses and stuff like that.
Right.
I'm sure, like there's a reason there. With that in mind, does the city offer, because I know that like when we're talking about windows and doors and stuff like this, I'm sure that some of the materials and the things needed are not things that you could just run out to Lowe's and get. Like they're things that would require a bit more of a fine touch or maybe sort of specialty products to repair or replace these things. Does the city offer incentives for those kind of things or programs to help people with those kind of things?
Well, and people would love to have incentives or some kind of funds that we would have to help them refurbish their house. Unfortunately, we do not have that. And I will say, nationally speaking, it is a little unusual. There are some there are some cities that have programs that offer, like facade enhancement dollars and such, but we don't have that. I do pretty routinely, maybe not every year, but I do offer historic windows workshops, and my predecessor before me. Those are very popular. As I mentioned earlier, since windows are souls of the house, often people are like, "Oh, these old, windows, they're no good. They're I just need to rip them out and put new windows in."
They want like the energy efficient type things, yeah.
And so then I have to, do some education, and part of that is, again, we try to do that education through our historic windows workshops and such. So we do that kind of thing. But if they call me and they're like, "Oh, I'm needing to do XYZ in my house," I can try to point them in some directions to help them out. As far as, well, you need to, and I can, sometimes if it's something really specific, I can send them some information that I have through the National Park System on best practices for maintenance or repair of a certain aspect or feature. I hope to, in the future, broaden it from the windows. Another one that's starting to come up quite a bit is the repair of brick, and at some point your structure gets to be 100 years old. That grout is going to need to be repointed, and you can't just go to Lowe's or Home Depot and get a bag of Portland cement and do it. It will not work out for you. It'll not be good.
Interesting.
Because it's not the same material that they used back in the day. They had a very different formula for their grout in the bricks, and so that requires some, often some professional advice on how to do that, or a professional to do it. So, but in the future, I hope to have a workshop that would look at those aspects, because I do get that off. We have a lot of brick.
Yes,
in our 3 districts. So, yeah. But, yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a way to just, say, hey, run over to this, place and they can get your specialty item. Sometimes it's online. There are some places in Oklahoma City. One of them is dead people stuff.
Oh, yes, I know the store you're talking about.
Yes. Sometimes I refer people to that because maybe they're missing. Sometimes it's interior stuff. They want to, the whole house has the original, glass doorknobs, and they want one to match for this one door, and it doesn't have it. And I'll tell them, you can try dead people stuff in Oklahoma City and see if they have what you need. And I've definitely found stuff there for my 1950s houses, so you can definitely give that and it's always interesting. Give that a little tour, because it's always interesting, even if you don't find what you need.
Yeah.
But I can do some things like that to help people get to where they want to be, because a lot of people are interested in keeping their historic home historic.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that. Well, there was one thing I also wanted to ask you about as well. I believe it was the state a few years ago launched an app that sort of helps with this historic stuff.
Well,
talk a little bit about that app.
Yeah. So every year, the State Historic Preservation Office offers funds. They're called Certified Local Government Funds that the city can apply for to do educational projects. And again, those funds are coming through the National Park System. That's the overarching entity in the United States, is the National Park System for historic preservation. And so those funds come to the Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office, and they send it out to the cities in Oklahoma that are certified local government cities, which Norman is one of those cities. And by the way, there's 15 other cities in Oklahoma besides us that are part of this certified local government program. And they offer a set amount of funds, and then we have to use them for education and training, and for running the commission kind of aspects. So several years ago, they were interested in people moving from paper map tours to the more digital world. So I think mine was maybe second one in Oklahoma to do it. I think Ardmore did it first, but to do these historic app tour on your phone. So we have now a way for you to take a tour of the National Register buildings here in the downtown campus corner area, OU campus area, and those are all on the National Register of Historic Places. And then I have just recently, last year, completed one for the Southridge Historic District. And both of these are tours. You get on, you scan, you download an app, which is called Story, and then you can take the tour as you walk around to those buildings. The Southridge one is because the Southridge folks, after they became a historic district, which was only in 2018.
Oh, wow.
That was a neighborhood initiative. They came to me saying we wanted to be a historic district. I told them the process that they had to go through, which is a pretty good process. You're putting a zoning overlay on top of your property, so you're going to have additional regulations that you have to follow. So,
well, and that's something that then anyone that moves in there also has to follow. I mean, that's
right.
a thing and it's not easy to change that.
Exactly.
Once it's put into
it's
place.
It's not easy to get it, because you have to have 51% of the land area owners agree to it. I will say in Southridge, they had like 85%.
Oh, wow. So they really wanted it.
They really wanted in. But after they got done with that process and became a historic district, the neighborhood on their own took the initiative to pay an architectural historian to make application to become on the National Register. So the Southridge District, most of it, that's also part of the city designated district, because they're not exactly the same boundaries,
Right.
but most of it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So I did my second tour is of the Southridge Historic District. So that one, I think is pretty cool. So that one will really give people a sense of what it looks like, and why a residential historic district is important to preserve. And so, that one I'm super proud of that one, because that took some effort, because there's a lot of, there's 100 structures in the Southridge Historic District. And so I picked out about 20 of them to highlight in that, just to give people a feel for the different types of houses and such in the Southridge District.
Well, Anais, that's all. All of this is incredibly fascinating to me. I mean, I'm really interested in history, and Norman has a very rich history in and of itself, and it's neat that we have these districts and these neighborhoods that are preserved in the way that they are, and all the hard work that you've done. I feel like we could probably sit here for like another hour just talking about all the fine points of what you do, but I don't want to keep you too long. But is there anything else you want to add about our historic districts and what you do, about the Historic District Commission? Anything?
I just would say it is a worthy endeavor for a city to keep their historic character preserved, and an important aspect of a quality city is often having a strong historic preservation aspect to it. I would say that, and I would say get out there and take some tours and find out about your city, because you'd be really surprised what you'd find out. Just taking these 2 small tours that I have, you'd be surprised what you'd find out. So yes, I would say go tour.
Very well put. Anais, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Questions or commentary about On West Gray can be sent into publicaffairs@normanok.gov. On West Gray is produced and edited by Bryce Holland, that's me, of the City of Norman's Communication Department. Be sure to visit normanok.gov/Norman-news to enroll in e-notifications from the City of Norman. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, be good to one another, and enjoy everything our amazing city has to offer. We'll be back again in a month here on West Gray.